We are on Unit 4, Lecture 8, and we are finished. Well, we're not finished yet. We have to finish the lecture. So this one is about Greek philosophy. The word philosophy is a Greek word, and it means the love of wisdom. What is the difference in wisdom and knowledge? This is an important one. I know you're only 12 years old, but I want you to learn the difference in wisdom and knowledge. Knowledge is purely knowing something. If I give you a really long list of words to memorize and you memorize them, then you know those words. Wisdom would be able to actually use those words in conversation. Use the words, understand, learn what they mean, really understand their meaning, and to be able to integrate those words into your everyday conversations. Knowledge is just memorizing a long list of words. I mean, anybody can do that. I could give you guys a list of, I could say, inauguration. I could say democracy. I could say, I'm having a hard time right now. I don't know why I can't think of words, probably because I'm tired, it's the end of the day. But I could make this really long list of words and any one of you could memorize that list. Wisdom would be actually knowing what an inauguration is and being able to use it in a sentence. Knowing what a democracy is and being able to use it. So there's a big difference. And the Greeks, these thinkers, they liked to understand why something was. They didn't care anything about just saying 2 + 2 is 4. They wanted to know why is 2 + 2 4. And they did all kinds of asking of questions and creative thinking and critical thinking and coming to realize why the world works how it does. That's what the Greeks did. There was this one very famous Greek philosopher called Socrates, and he was an amazing man. Socrates really liked to help make people think, make them think about, why do I believe what I believe? Why is that? And Socrates did these things. He would approach lots of times young people on the street, and he would say, hey, do you believe in Zeus? Do you believe in Zeus? And this person would, of course, be like, of course I believe in Zeus. What kind of dumb question is that? And Socrates would say, why? Why do you believe in Zeus? And then this person would be like, what do you mean? I believe in Zeus because everybody else believes in Zeus. And Socrates would say, that's kind of a dumb reason. If everybody else jumped off a bridge, would you jump off a bridge? And then this person's going, And he asks again, what is your reason? Why do you believe in Zeus? They'd be like, well, my mom and dad believe in Zeus. Okay, well, my mom and dad believe a whole bunch of stupid stuff. Does that mean I have to believe a whole bunch of stupid stuff? Why do you believe in Zeus? Think about it. Give me a well thought out answer as to why you actually believe in Zeus. And he didn't just do it with the gods, he would do it with just regular traditions. Like, why do you do this? And if the answer was, everybody else does it, he would challenge them. And he had lots of fun with it. Socrates would just wander down the street in the city and randomly stop some person and start talking to them about their beliefs and their thoughts about life, and question them and make them deeply think about why they did what they did and why they believed what they believed. But eventually, it got him in trouble. And Socrates, because he challenged everyday beliefs. And he got in trouble and he was taken to court. He was taken to court for corrupting the young. Corrupting means like making bad. So asking all these questions was making people think, and then might actually make them not believe in Zeus anymore, or not want to do these traditions that had always been done before. So he was accused of corrupting the youth. He was found guilty, and in 399 BCE, Socrates was put to death. Sad face. Socrates was put to death for walking down the street and encouraging people to think. It's pretty sad. But his style of questioning and his style of teaching now has its own name, and it's called the Socratic method. And I, Mrs. Givens, I teach using the Socratic method. It's a big reason, it's a big part of why I tend to let you guys use your notes on your test, because simply memorizing a list of names and dates, that doesn't really mean that you understand this stuff. I don't care if you can memorize a huge list of names and dates. I don't care. I want you to know it and understand it and be able to use it. And some of you can memorize all this stuff and truly, truly understand it. And some of you need a little help with that. But simply memorizing a list doesn't interest me at all. I don't care if you simply memorize a list. I want to know that you truly understand this stuff. That's why I'm making these videos. That's why I'm a teacher. Really, I became a teacher mostly based on loving Socrates. Okay, so Socrates had a student named Plato. And Plato wrote a book of Socrates, his conversations. Plato went around listening to Socrates have these conversations with people on the street. And Plato wrote those conversations. And those conversations, the book is called Dialogues. These days, you'll find a book that says The Dialogues of Socrates. And I highly encourage you to read them when you get to be maybe 22, 23. Right now, no matter how smart you are, and I truly have some brilliant 12-year-olds in my class, you just wouldn't understand. They're written at a high, a level high enough to where you just, none of you, I know all of you wouldn't be able to get it. But when you're maybe 20, I highly recommend you reading the Dialogues of Socrates. They're really, really good. And so that's what this book was about. Plato followed around his teacher Socrates, listened to him talking to these random people on the streets, and he wrote down their conversations, and that was the Dialogues. Well, Plato, Plato started a school, his own school called the Academy. And his school was based on Socrates' teachings. And then, who was it? Yes, Plato's student, Aristotle, started his own school called the Lyceum. So Socrates' student Plato wrote a book about Socrates' conversations out on the street. And Plato started his own school called the Academy. Well, Aristotle was a student of Plato, and Aristotle started his own school called the Lyceum. All right. So there was another philosophical movement that started in ancient Greek, and it was called Stoicism. And it was started by a philosopher named Zeno. And Stoics, this is people that practiced Stoicism. Someone that practices Stoicism is called a Stoic. So the Stoics were really, really into nature and trying to balance our humanity with nature. And they thought that grand displays of emotion didn't really fit with the balance of nature. And the Stoics believed very, very strongly in controlling their emotions. Never getting too sad or too happy or too angry or too whatever. Just kind of being chill all the time. The Stoics tried to be chill all the time. And also, I love history. I hope you love history. One of the most important people ever in the world of history is Herodotus. And Herodotus is the father of history. And why he's called the father of history was he wrote a book called The Histories. It's a book called The Histories, and it was about the Persian War. Persian Wars. And he didn't just write fact. He didn't say this war happened. He went into the history of the cultures, the history of the Greek city-states, and the history of the Persian Empire, and what was it that caused the war? Why did they fight together? Mark, I remember you, Mark, asked me in class one day, how do we know all this about history? Well, Herodotus actually wrote this stuff down about the war, and we can still read it. I can't read Greek, but if I could read Greek, we can still read this stuff. It's translated into English, but I wish I could read Greek. So he was really the first person in Greek history that wrote really, really detailed books about not only the fact on this date there was a fight, but why were they fighting? Like today, imagine if you get in an argument with your friend in school. Well, what happens? You have to go to some teacher that sits down, and what is the very first thing that teacher is going to ask you? What's this about? Why are you fighting? Well, that wasn't written about before. Nobody cared before. It wasn't, we had historical notes that there were wars, but nobody really paid too much attention to why they were fighting. And there was also Thucydides. Thucydides that wrote about the Peloponnesian War. Peloponnesian. This guy actually went and interviewed people that fought in the war and interviewed people that saw the war, wrote their stories down, listened to it, thought about everything, and then wrote a book about it. Wrote a book about the war, including these personal stories from people that were actually there. Then this guy named Xenophon wrote the very first autobiography. Probably you know what an autobiography is. I bet you've had to do something in writing class before. An autobiography is a book about a person's life written by that person. If I wrote a book about my life, it would be an autobiography. Auto means self. And a biography is about a person's life. So a biography, if I wrote a book about your life, then I wrote a biography. If I write a book about my life, it's an autobiography. So those are some history people that are pretty cool. This one, father of history. All right. So let's go back and talk about Aristotle for a minute. So we had Socrates, and then Socrates' student was Plato, and then Plato's student was Aristotle. Does anyone remember who Aristotle's student was? Big, famous person. Aristotle's student was Alexander the Great, right? Yay. So Aristotle, or this is kind of a thing with philosophers, and this is still today. Lots of philosophers are not only really good at one thing. Lots of philosophers, if they're really good at math, they're also really good at history. If they're really good at math and history, they're also really good at science. If they're really good at math and history and science, they're also really good at art. It's just a thing. Philosophers, lots of times, are really good at a lot of things. Aristotle was really good at math, and he was really good at logic. I didn't talk to you guys about logic. Hold on 1 minute and I will. And he studied government. He studied art. He studied plants. He studied animals. He studied rocks. And his interest in all these things made Alexander the Great interested in all these things. When Alexander the Great did all of his conquering that we talked about in 2 units ago, when he did all this conquering, he brought scientists with him. He took scientists with him on all that conquering because it was so important to him that scientists be able to be there and document their new discoveries. Logic is the Socratic method. If you are using reasoning, that's reasoning. Why? If someone asks you why, and you give a reason, well, that's reasoning. I'm using my reasoning for making this lecture is because I know a lot of my students like it. And the reason my students like it is because hopefully my videos make things more interesting to you and more exciting, and you understand it better than if you were to just read the book. The reason you understand it better is because, I'm not going to keep going, but hopefully now you understand what reasoning is. Well, using reasoning is called logic. If you are using reasoning to explain something, then you're using logic. Hopefully that all makes sense. And at this time, the Greeks, because they were some of them were these great philosophers that had these wonderful minds, people were just getting smarter and they were thinking about new ideas and new inventions. Greeks invented locks. Greeks invented clocks. Greeks invented water mills. And they even used steam power to operate little robotic type things. It was really, really cool. Steam power to operate robots. No, Exia, not the kind of robots that you build. They weren't quite that sophisticated. We're talking over 2,000 years ago, but they could make little arms move like this, or they could make a lever go up or down, or maybe out and back using steam power. And that was pretty cool. There was a very famous mathematician named Pythagoras. I don't know know at 12 if you guys have learned the Pythagorean theorem or not. I don't know if that's, I can't remember if it's 12-year-old math or 13-year-old math. I think it's 12-year-old math. Sometime this year, you will learn the Pythagorean theorem, and it's math and ancient Greek realized. It's a squared plus b squared equals c squared when we're talking about triangles. I'll teach you a tiny little bit of math. If this side is A and this side is B and this side is C, then what it's saying is if B is equal to 3 and A is equal to 4, then C, so let's say 3 squared plus 4 squared, 3 squared is 9, and 4 squared is 16, then 16 plus 9 equals c squared. So saying 4 squared plus 3 squared equals c squared. 16 plus 9 equals c squared. 16 plus 9 is 25. 25 equals c squared. Then we have to get the square root of both sides. And 5 equals c. So on this triangle, c is 5. I'm just going to do it one more quick time. I know this isn't math class, but I want you to understand how smart this guy was. If I say, I'm going to scratch out all of this so you can't see it. Let me erase it. Okay. Pythagoras figured out that if absolutely he knows this side is 4 centimeters and this side is 3 centimeters, and we don't know how long this side is, you can figure it out. Because he says that if you square this one and you add it to the square of this one, you're going to get the square of this one. So now I know 3 squared is 9, 4 squared is 16, equals c squared. 9 plus 16 is 25. So 25 equals c squared. But I don't want c squared, I just want c. So I'm going to have to do the square root of both sides. What's the square root of 25? The square root of 25 is 5. And the square root of c squared is c. Look at that. Now I know that this side is 5. Well, this dude didn't have anyone teach him that. No teacher taught Pythagoras how to do that. He figured it out all on his own. He was so smart. This is something that we still teach in school today. I just taught it to you now. You'll get it in math class later this year. Your teacher will teach you the Pythagorean theorem. And you're going to tell your teacher, you better tell your teacher, Mrs. Gibbons taught us this in cultural studies class. Pythagoras was an ancient Greek mathematician. Yes. Okay. So now let me show you a little map because we're going to go over here. Okay. So here's ancient Greece. Here's Egypt. Do you remember Alexandria? Alexandria of Egypt was a big city and it was on the coast. And because it's on the coast, people could get there from all over the place. And Egypt became this great city for knowledge. There was an amazing library there built by the Ptolemies. Where is my, okay, hopefully everyone remembers the Ptolemies. The Ptolemy, there would be a Y here, but I'm talking about plural, their family. The Ptolemies built a library. They really valued education. And the Ptolemies' goal was to have a copy of every single book on the world, on earth. Every book ever written, they wanted a copy of it. And back then, copying a book meant a person had to literally copy word for word the book. They collected 500,000 books. It was an amazing library. And because there was this amazing library, smart people, students that wanted to learn, came from all over to Alexandria. And so Alexandria became this really saturated with smart people city. And medicine became pretty good there. The Egyptians were really good at recording the symptoms. If someone was sick, the Egyptians were really, really good at writing down exactly what happened to them. Then the Greeks came along to help them, and the Greeks asked why. Why did this happen? Because before, or the Egyptians and lots of other people on earth at this time, they believed, I mean, why would you ask why? Of course it was the gods. If you got sick, it was because the gods were mad at you. You had done something wrong, the gods were mad at you, you got sick. End. Well, the Greeks, the Greek philosophers, the Greek doctors, they started thinking, maybe there's some natural, like earthly reason to why people get sick. And they started interviewing sick people. And they were like, well, what did you eat? What did you drink? Who have you been around? And they started asking all these questions and coming up with reasons to why people got sick. Now, their ideas to what they thought caused was called a hypothesis. I'm sure you've heard the word hypothesis in science class. A hypothesis is your reasoning for why you think something happened. And the Greeks started doing that. Now, the Greeks' hypotheses were not always right. Sometimes they were really wrong, but they didn't know that. At the time, they were doing the best they could. They asked, why this, why that? And then they came up with, well, I think it happened because, and if you say that, I think it happened because, then that's a hypothesis. They're not always proven. They can't be, you can't always say it's right or wrong. You can just, but it's a guess. So scientists, medical scientists at this time, they did autopsies, which is where they cut open a dead body and looked at how things worked inside. And it was medical people way back then that found out that the nerve behind our eyeballs was connected to the brain. Hopefully you guys know, if this is, we're looking at the side of a person. Oh, that was actually pretty good. Okay, so your eyeballs, not there. There, I messed it up. Eyeballs are down here. There we are. Let me, I can't really get in there to erase that. Okay, so your eyes are here. And your brain is here. Well, we have a nerve right here that goes straight from our eyeball to our brain. And that's called the optic nerve. And it was these ancient Greeks that discovered that. Ancient Greeks also discovered that our brain was the center of our thoughts. And how would you know that? How do you know that what controls our thought, what controls our mind, how do you know that's not your liver? I mean, you only know that it's your brain because teachers have taught you that. They didn't have anyone to teach them that. They had to figure it out all on their own. They were the original teachers of this information. They also figured out that our pulse is what sends blood throughout our body. People never knew that before. They figured it all out. And we're almost finished. So go back to this map. The Romans that lived here, the Romans were very, very heavily influenced by the Greeks. Romans looked over here and were like, whoa, that's really cool. I like the way they do things. And they started doing things the Greek way, heavily influenced. And when there was a real blend of Roman culture and Greek culture, it's called Greco-Roman. Greco-Roman culture. We just learned about the Greeks. When we come back after the winter break, we're going to learn about the Romans. That's it. I hope you enjoyed. Bye, guys.